We've seen some of the greatest final games in the history of sports. Kobe Bryant's 60 points in his last game immediately comes to mind, where the entire crowd constantly doused him in cheers.
To get tired. Down the middle he goes, corner of the key! He's got another one! Kobe with the ball and the...
Dirk Nowitzki had a similar exit. The Mavs kept feeding him the ball because the entire Dallas crowd wanted to see their beloved superstar have a glorious departure. Heck, even Vince Carter. He had a great farewell game too. Due to the pandemic and the announcement of the season getting postponed, Carter checked in to his final game and hit a three-pointer in front of a roaring crowd.
They're going to give it to Vince. He's going to take a three and hit it.
I mean, even Allen Iverson, who still returned to Philly in his last season and still got a mini farewell tour. But for most former superstars, this isn't the case. They end their careers quietly as they fade into the sunset, or in these cases, it's even worse. How's it going, folks? My name's Andy, and today, in this video, we're gonna take a detailed look at 6 former NBA superstars who ended their careers in the most embarrassing ways possible. Without further ado, let's begin. What's more embarrassing than ending your career trying to chase another championship and failing? Well, many superstars have tried to do that, but I can think of something even more embarrassing. Imagine trying to chase the title, but in the process, you get injured while literally jogging down the court. In the summer of 2010, Shaquille O'Neal proudly gave himself yet another mediocre nickname, the Big Shamrock.
Maybe you may have never thought this would ever happen. Did you be playing for the Celtics?
No, never. Growing up, I hated the Celtics.
As he signed with the Boston Celtics, a team I didn't ever think Shaq would play for. Despite seeing the Miami Heat form their infamous Big Three in the same summer, Shaq still believed the Celtics were the championship favorites and was very clear in his reasoning to join. He wanted another title because he wanted to surpass Tim Duncan. At that time, both of them were tied with 4 rings each. But of course, Duncan eventually got his 5th, while Shaq ended his career still with 4. Initially, his contract with Boston lasted for 2 years, but he only lasted 1, or more like half. His lone season in Boston was filled with injuries and capped off with a disappointing run in the playoffs, where they got dismantled by the Miami Heat super team, the team that Shaq predicted the Celtics would beat. Towards the end of that season, Shaq was struggling to even walk properly. He missed 27 straight games, and when he came back, he immediately got injured again by slowly jogging down the floor.
After the steal of a Ray Allen pass. Yeah.
In timeout, Celtics.
Shaquille O'Neal hobbles.
He's been dealing with a multitude of leg injuries caused by years of neglecting his body, and this random injury was a culmination of all of that. Shaq used to claim he'd party over the summer and use the regular season as a way to get into shape. But in this single moment, his entire career flashed before his eyes. At the age of 39, he can't get by like that anymore. Not only did this embarrassing injury put an end to his regular season, but he missed the first 6 games of the playoffs. And when he came back, he played like he just got out of the hospital. Shaq looked completely lost and ineffective. He literally couldn't do anything on the court. Honestly, it was kind of sad to see. The funny part is, when the Celtics tried to bring him back to play out the second year of his contract, Shaq responded, quote, "I felt so bad when they called me back and said, 'Hey man, we owe you $1.5 million.' I said, 'Fuck it, keep it.' But he felt so embarrassed that he didn't even want to accept the rest of his salary, and promptly retired right after the Celtics' playoff run ended. For a guy with as illustrious of a career as the great Shaquille O'Neal, this definitely was one of the most embarrassing departures in the history of basketball. I think when people talk about the failure of a super team that was the 2012-13 Los Angeles Lakers, Steve Nash kinda gets a pass. Fans tend to put the blame on Dwight Howard, even though he was suffering even worse back problems than Nash. Or Pau Gasol, who could not play alongside Dwight at all. Or Coach Mike D'Antoni, who struggled to put his players in the right place to succeed. However, that doesn't dismiss the fact that Nash was still an all-star in his final year in Phoenix. Then, 65 games later across 2 seasons, he looked like he crawled out of a coffin. On October 15, 2014, shortly before his 3rd season in LA, Nash injured his back while carrying bags. Apparently, it was so bad that this back injury turned into severe nerve damage, which made it so difficult for him to even get out of bed. Nash was ruled out for his entire 3rd season and subsequently concluded the end of his NBA career. This is a guy who had perennial averages of nearly 50% from the field, 40% from 3, the most efficient point guard of his generation. Heck, even in his 1st season in LA, he put up nearly those numbers. But by his 2nd year, he battled recurring knee problems, and his minutes dropped to the lowest since his rookie year. His percentages even worse. And he only appeared in 15 games the entire season. Before his fateful back injury from carrying bags, he was barely holding on to begin with. Nash has always had recurring back problems throughout his life, so it's not surprising at all his career got finished off with another back injury. But the way it happened, it did not sit well with him. Nash worked his tail off in LA just trying to get back on the court, and still yearned to play at the level he expects from himself. Even when Dwight and Powell left to seek better opportunities elsewhere, Nash still wanted to stay and mentor the young folks on the Lakers, even when his body was crumbling to dust. Despite numerous attempts to rehabilitate his back and return to basketball, Nash never felt healthy enough to play again, thus putting an end to a legendary career for the former 2-time MVP. Some would say Deron Williams lost all his motivation and drive to win long before his final days before retiring. Unfortunately, those final days will stick in the memory of most fans. Despite a well-accomplished career that saw him lead the Utah Jazz to perennial playoff appearances, he'll never escape the embarrassment of his performance in the 2017 finals. His last playoff series ever, and the last memory we'll ever have of the once exhilarating point guard. In that series, Williams played 61 minutes across 5 games, shot 2 for 16 from the field, including 1 for 9 from 3. In fact, he recorded more fouls than points. To make things worse, Deron was also a traffic cone on defense. The Warriors sought him out to attack him every possession, because at this point, not only was he useless on offense, but he had nothing left in the tank on defense. Zero agility or quickness that he was once known for. For a player who, for 80% of his career, was compared to the likes of Chris Paul, Deron never had the same level of dedication, and his mind was already focused on other things outside of basketball. To be fair, he probably should have retired after his contract with the Nets was over, as he hated his time there. Deron even stated, "It took a lot out of me, man. Those 3 years, some of the hardest in my life, made me question if I even wanted to play basketball when I was done with that contract." Essentially, long before he even joined the Cavs, Deron had 1 foot out the door. Perhaps he should have put both feet out the door. If you put players on a scale based on how much you hate this person versus how talented they were, I think Karl Malone might be the most lopsided player in terms of reputation. Everyone knows he's an all-time great, an all-time legendary talent. But he also impregnated a 13-year-old, and even on the court, Malone was a menace. His nickname, the Mailman, is accurate because he always delivers elbows. On the other end, he's, in my opinion, the greatest player in history who never won a championship, though not for a lack of trying. After several attempts in the finals and competing in a very tough Western Conference throughout the 90s, the Jazz could never get over the hump no matter what they did. Fast forward to the 2003 offseason, and a desperate Karl Malone, still seeking his first championship, decided to join the Lakers to form the ever-so-iconic super team. However, they weren't exactly iconic in a good way. This era in Los Angeles was marred with controversy. Kobe's court case involving his escapades in Colorado, The feud between him and Shaq reached an all-time high, and when you add two extremely old veterans like Malone and Payton, it's not exactly gonna fix anything. Derek Fisher was so upset he lost his starting spot that he left the team a year later. Malone was trying to sleep with Kobe's wife. The players hated each other. It was problems upon problems. It's a miracle they even reached the finals to begin with. Despite being known as an Iron Man, Malone was plagued with injuries, missing half the season and playing crippled for the entire playoffs. It's uncharacteristic for him to miss this many games, but I guess age catches up to everyone. He capped off his 19-season career with the worst series he's ever had. Against Detroit in the finals, although he was basically running on one leg, he showed an embarrassing display of an old man desperately trying to win the title, but clearly lacking any physical ability left. In 31 minutes a game, he only managed to average 5 points on 33% shooting. Here's the interesting part. Malone originally wanted to come back to LA and try again, even after Shaq left, but compounded by his personal issues with Kobe, along with off-season knee surgery, the Lakers opted to not bring him back, and thus ending his final attempt at chasing that elusive championship that slipped away once again. I've got a family to feed. Have you ever seen a player say a single sentence and realize, oh, his career is done? Latrell Sprewell, in his early days, was regarded as one of a handful of shooting guards who could possibly take over the throne following Jordan's retirement. At the age of 23, he became a back-to-back All-Star in 1994 and 95, coincidentally during the years of MJ's first retirement. The league was starving for another exciting, dynamic young shooting guard to cheer for, and replicates even a fraction of what MJ has done. For a few years, Latrell Sprewell was that guy. In his sophomore season, he made first-team All-NBA and second-team All-Defense, joining only a handful of shooting guards in history who made both of these teams in a single season. Unfortunately, like many other shooting guards labeled the next MJ, it was a premature comparison. Sprewell and the Golden State Warriors never got anywhere in terms of team success, and his attitude problems ranged from confrontations with his teammates, literally trying to fight his teammates and threaten to shoot them, then arguments with his coaches who tried to hold him accountable, which resulted in the infamous choking incident. In 1997, Spree choked out his head coach and got hit with a 68-game suspension. Up until that point in NBA history, it was the most games a player has ever been suspended for. Needless to say, there's no way he'd get away with any of this in the modern NBA. He'd probably be out of the league in his first couple years. But Spree was so talented, and people looked past his issues, because he remained a great player up until his last couple years in Minnesota. Fast forward to the 2004 offseason. After the most successful season the Timberwolves have ever had, it was time for a new contract. Sprewell had 1 year left on his deal, and the negotiations started. The Wolves put their generous offer on the table. 3 years, $21 million. Considering the salary cap back then was only $43 million, Sprewell would make $7 million per year, roughly 16% of the cap, which is, reasonable. He was approaching his mid-30s, and his game was nowhere near as effective as it once was. Unfortunately, Sprewell did not think so. Feeling disrespected by this offer, he came out and said his infamous quote, "I've got a family to feed." It gets even worse afterwards. So Sprewell immediately rejects this offer, and then he decides to wait a year for better offers. However, by the time his contract was up, he started to realize, no one wants to pay me. He was getting offers less than his initial $7 million per year. Some teams offered him $5 million per year, to which he responded, "That's a level beneath which I would not stoop or kneel." His plan was to wait until teams got really desperate and hopefully pay him more. But apparently, no teams were desperate enough. His plan backfired. Latrell Sprewell's embarrassing end to his career was entirely self-inflicted, so I honestly don't feel bad. He could have very well played an extra 3 or 4 seasons if he realized his own worth, but his arrogance and flat-out stupid strategy to get paid more resulted in nothing. This is why players should always accept a great deal when it's on the table, because you never know, maybe that deal won't come around again. If you're a fan of NBA trivia, do you remember all those quizzes on Sporkle back in the day? Well, every time there was a question like this, which of these former stars never got past the first round? Tracy McGrady was always the obvious answer. Or so you think. T-Mac actually did get past the first round one time in his 16-season career. This would be his final year in the league. Towards the end of the 2012-13 season, McGrady, a free agent, signed with the San Antonio Spurs. He didn't play a single regular season game for them, but the Spurs signed him for their playoff run, hoping that, 1, maybe T-Mac still has an ounce of talent left in his bag. And 2, he's been around for a while with very little team success, so maybe this could be his chance to experience something new, to experience what winning feels like. You never know, maybe for one game, or even one quarter, we'll get a vintage T-Mac performance.
Dexter misfires there. McGrady the rebound. McGrady, who played in China earlier this season, ball for double dribble.
Unfortunately, that day never came. Tracy McGrady appeared in just 6 playoff games, all of which in garbage time. In fact, he didn't score a single point in the entire 2013 playoffs. Since the Spurs did reach the finals, T-Mac technically got past the first round for the first time of his career. I mean, he didn't do anything, but it still counts, right? The 2013 finals were memorable for multiple reasons, but McGrady wasn't one of them. Most folks didn't even realize he was on the Spurs, as he didn't play at all in the final 4 games of the series. It was quite the unceremonious ending to one of the most exciting, most popular players in the history of the sport. To end your career with a playoff run scoring 0 points, it's definitely a very bitter ending for a very prolific scorer back in his day. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope y'all enjoyed the video. Can you think of any other former superstars who also had a very embarrassing ending to their career? An ending that we didn't ever expect from them? Let me know in the comments. And of course, as always, I'll see you next time. Peace.